Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. John Fogerty, legendary singer and songwriter of Creedence Clearwater Revival, rocks Wolf Trap in Virginia this Saturday night. He joined me to discuss his most iconic hits, including Proud Mary, Bad Moon Rising, Green River, Down on the Corner, Fortunate Son, Up Around the Bend, Have You Ever Seen the Rain, and so many more.
Hi, Jason. This is John.
John Fogerty, hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP in Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Legendary singer, songwriter, founder of Creedence Clearwater Revival, as well as all of your solo stuff over the years, because you're going to be coming and playing it all at Wolf Trap in Virginia this Saturday, August 19th. It's a rare chance for someone to see our listeners to come see a legend like you. So remind me, this is like a bit of a celebration tour for you, right? Like I remember seeing a few months ago that you just got the rights back to all your CCR songs earlier this year. It only took like 55 years or something, but we've seen, Taylor Swift re-recorder stuff with her, publishers and all that stuff. But like, how excited are you that you have your catalog back? That's exciting.
Oh, well, any songwriter will tell you that it's like finding your children, it's a thing I've been fighting for, as you say, 50 plus years. Way back in the day, you don't even realize that you're giving up the rights to your songs. You just think that, some sort of human sort of arrangement will prevail, but that was not to be the case. And I got pretty agitated about it back in the day, you might say. And I've proceeded to try and get those rights back for a long, long time. U.S. law, copyright law being what it is, it just meant I was going to have to work on it a long time. And really here at the home stretch, my wife, Julie, is the one that really made it happen now. It could have dragged on for another several years, but she just kept kind of chipping away at it. And I finally got the rights back now. I'm really, really happy about it. It's like finally something just falling into place, the stars getting aligned, and life is good. And it gives you sort of a fresh, happy way of thinking about Proud Mary and all those other songs that I wrote. And so we're calling this tour, it may be called this for the rest of my life. I don't know. We're calling it Celebration because of the fact that I'm now owning my songs for the first time in my life. And it just puts a kind of an extra spin on the performance, of course.
That's so great. Now, just to clarify, this is like, the publishing rights, or I guess whenever they stream or an album or a song, something gets downloaded or sells. But were you in all that time, all those 55 years, you were still allowed to play them live, right? You just didn't get any, I guess, money when it sold. Is that right?
Well, it meant you don't own the song. You don't own the copyright. Therefore, you are not the one that gets to decide where and how that song's going to be used, like in a movie or God forbid, a commercial, hey, let's have a Creedence song for Agent Orange. How about that? Or maybe for, I don't know, for a neutron bomb or something. Right. I mean, the uses, somebody else was making those decisions. Or maybe Son of the Swamp Thing. That was always one of my favorites. couldn't be in the real Swamp Thing. Had to be in Son of the Swamp Thing. And so now I'm the one that gets to decide that, hey, hell yeah, I want to be in the Swamp Thing. I'm joking, but it means I get to decide those issues. But yeah, it was never a question of whether or not I could perform the songs. In fact, I've been performing them, for the last 20 something years, and happily so. So they can't keep you from performing, but they certainly somebody else was owning the song and deciding how the song would be used.
Well, now when you play them live, if our folks come to see you at Wolf Trap, they'll hear you sing them live, but there'll be an extra, celebratory smile on your face, a little extra pep in your step as you sing those words. Because like you said, these are your babies, your kids have finally returned home. That's great.
That's
Well,
right.
I would love to give our listeners, because I would love to give them a little, cool backstories on some of those big hits. It amazes me how, the CCR, I guess you formed in Cali in like 68, Brother Tom on rhythm guitar, Stu Cook bass, Doug Clifford drums, like the original lineup. But it always amazes me how many hits you all rattled off in a relatively short amount of time. It wasn't a decades long band, but like, man, you were writing your face off, sir. If you were like, I don't know what you're having for breakfast every day, but you were writing hit after hit. So I would love to go through a couple of them if you don't mind. Like, I know on that first self-titled album, Creedence Clearwater Revival in 68, there was Susie Q and I Put a Spell on You.
Well, I'll go back a little bit, Jason. I started writing songs probably before I was 8 years old, but the one I remember when I was 8 years old, I was about the third grade, just as I went out the door to walk to school, because my little grammar school was, just a few blocks from my house. And I was listening to the local rhythm and blues station, because actually it was before they had a thing called rock and roll. And so I was listening to R&B, and I had just heard a commercial for some sort of laundry product, right? And the DJ said something like, "Have you got the wash day blues?" Now, remember, this is a radio station that played a lot of blues. That was part of the lexicon. I mean, the artists were Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, people like that.
Yeah.
And so you heard that term a lot. And somehow that stuck in my head as, oh, and all the way to school, I was thinking about wash day blues. Remember, I'm 8 years old. I mean, it's not a real profound subject, but I started writing this little ditty, and it went to the tune or the music of the old Muddy Waters Willie Dixon riff, the one that goes dun 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 dun, that thing. And so I was putting my words of Wash Day Blues to that music as I walked along to school. And the only reason I bring that up is, from that point, certainly forward in my life, all through lower school and then junior high, et cetera, starting a little rock and roll band, I was writing songs. Some of them were, songs with lyrics, and a lot of other times it were guitar songs, instrumentals. But I've studied or listened to or was really curious about all the great songwriters in history, not just the guy that was currently, let's say, whoever wrote Hound Dog, which was probably Lieber and Stoller, but all through time, like Hoagy Carmichael, or my mom would talk about Irving Berlin or people like that. And I was just curious about the process, because I was a kid and realizing that whatever I was doing was not like what they had done. I just figured, well, I'm learning. I'm learning. I'm trying to get better, right?
Of course, the second album, Bayou Country, had Born on the Bayou, but and Proud Mary. Tell me about, for a deep dive, Proud Mary, because Tina Turner just passed away and she famously covered it. I guess Kenny Chesney even quoted "Rolling on a River" with Creedence. But yeah, just tell me about writing Proud Mary and thoughts on Tina's passing as well.
So I had been writing songs, most of my life, realizing that, again, that I'm an amateur when compared to somebody like Lennon and McCartney or whoever. And it was right at the height of the Vietnam War. And I had been drafted. I'd gotten myself into the Army Reserves. I was just starting to I don't know, get into sort of the current or the modern iteration, let's say, of a rock and roll band. We were finally starting to kind of gel and actually sound like something.
Yeah.
And I was very much I was finding a conflict with my Army Reserve duty, and I was trying to figure out a way to get discharged so that I could actually look like a rock and roll person, meaning long hair, my appearance and all that, and not an Army guy. And also be able to go away on weekends, which is when the reserve meetings would be, and that was another conflict. So I had been working on trying to get my my discharge, right?
Yeah.
So one day, right on the steps of my little apartment house, there I find my honorable discharge from the Army. And so I was very, very excited about that. I was so excited that it meant a new freedom in my life. I actually turned a little cartwheel on the little patch of grass that was out in front of the apartment house. And then wow, I just was so excited. I ran in the house, picked up my guitar, started strumming these chords. It was a Rickenbacker guitar, by the way, so that you could play it without being plugged in, but it still kind of made some acoustic sound. And the first thing out of my mouth was, left a good job in the city, working for the man every night and day. Well, of course, I was talking about the Army, but I've kind of put it into a universal context, you might say. Well, within about 25, 30 minutes, I had finished almost the whole song of Proud Mary and written it down, gotten it organized on a piece of yellow legal pad, you might say. I used to use those kind of yellow tablets with some sort of a weird felt pen. And I'd written the whole song out and realized that, and it was called Proud Mary. And I was sitting there realizing I had composed my first really good song, like all those people that I was just referring to who were so far above me, were way up there in the professional ranks. And this was the first time I ever felt this way. I said, man, this is a standard. This is a real classic song. I could see that it was far better than anything I had ever done before. So that's why I told you all that stuff in the background, because somehow I had stepped into another dimension, and the dimension where good songwriters live, I guess you'd say. And I was pretty scared and trembled, excited, and everything else. And that's sort of the backstory of Proud Mary.
Thank you for that backstory. And it makes sense because, it's like you're saying that's fascinating to hear that was when you called it your first really great song that you wrote, because like the earlier album, like I Put a Spell on You was, Screaming Jay Hawkins, and Susie Q was Dale Hawkins. You did some really, really killer covers, but yeah, by that second album with Proud Mary, it was your turn to write the original. And then ironically, that would get covered by Tina Turner. Funny how that works out. Well, take me into the third album really quick, Green River. I love that title track and how, the wow, it's so good. It also had Lodi, Stuck in Lodi again, one of the great, like a visual storytelling song of being sort of trapped in a town. And of course, Bad Moon Rising. There's a bad moon on the rise, often misquoted. There's no bathrooms on the right, folks, but
there's a bathroom on the right.
Yeah, what the heck? Why do people? I don't know why people think that.
Well, kind of what happened is after Proud Mary and realizing I finally sort of fallen into a place that felt really warm and comfortable, like a great plaid shirt. It just felt like me. It felt like what I had been trying to find my whole life. And I finally found it with Proud Mary. It was this sort of, it had a little bit of Mark Twain in it. It had a little bit of Americana. They didn't have that word yet, but it was that sense. By the way, I happen to be sitting in Atlantic City right now, and I believe that's the Thunderbirds, the jet plane outfit, roaring back and forth. I think they know that we're doing an interview.
I love it. Well, get your makeup on and fix your hair out pretty. As Springsteen wrote, you're in Atlantic City now, so.
Hey, Bruce. Anyway, so Proud Mary and Born on the Bayou were starting to sort of come off the charts, and I wanted to stay on the radio. And so without an album, just a single came out, Bad Moon, and the other side was Lodi. Anyway, continuing on, by the time I got to what was going to be the third single that year, Green River, I just kind of went back and wrote about this place that I had gone when I was a child many, many times with my family. It was actually a place called Putah Creek. That's Putah, I believe, up in Northern California. But I kind of transmogrified it into the Green River, and wrote about all those things that were part of that scene, in my childhood. Most of those things are all actually factual things, part of Green River. It was just a favorite thing to me, and the musical setting, as far as I was concerned, at least at the time, was very much like the old Sun records. I just kind of pictured a bunch of those guys in one room, all playing at the same time to a certain kind of groove, and that groove became Green River.
I love it. And the rest of us were dancing in the moonlight thereon. I love it. All right, fourth album, Willie and the Poor Boys. Down that obviously the title that comes back in the song Down on the Corner, bring a nickel, tap your feet, seeing Willie and the Poor Boys. Tell me about recording Down on the Corner. Was that like did you know a group called Willie and the Poor Boys? Is that based on some sort of street corner singing group or something?
I think it's the way artists and songwriters work. One day I was over at my brother Tom's house. I think we were going to go to some kind of performance a little later, but we had an hour or so to just kind of chill. And I think he was putting strings on his guitar, perhaps. And I opened the newspaper. Daddy, what's a newspaper? But anyway, I opened the newspaper, and there was this full-page ad. Remember, this is before internet or YouTube or any of that. Yeah. Apparently, the Disney company was re-releasing of this thing. And so the top of this full-page ad in the newspaper said, Super Pooh Package, right? Okay. And then there was a picture of Winnie the Pooh. And it had, I don't know, I don't know what the format would have been in those days, because this is before VHS. I have no idea. This is about 1968.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it would have been. Perhaps actually motion pictures, 8mm film.
Yeah.
But it's called Super Pooh Package. And of course, I loved Winnie the Pooh way back, especially with my daughter Kelsey. We had a pretty much a secret club that her and I were in of Winnie the Pooh was our guy, right? And all the other characters. But anyway, so seeing that, I thought about, Winnie the Pooh. Wow, Winnie the Pooh. What if Winnie the Pooh had a little band? What if he played music? Wow, he'd be Winnie the Pooh and the Pooh Boys. Oh, Winnie and the Pooh Boys. No, Winnie. Well, probably don't want to use an actual product, because then everybody will think it's Winnie the, then it somehow morphed, over time into Willie, and not the Pooh Boys, but the Poor Boys. And okay. So I started writing a song based on those characters. It took me a while to come up with the little riff, the musical riff that is the kind of signature of that song. But I started at least visualizing a band playing Down on the Corner. I didn't even have it was in the beginning, Willie and the Poor Boys. And eventually you come up with I mean, how many times do other people say down on the, out in the street, down on the corner, but yeah. Nobody thinks to write that down and make it part of the song or the signature. But I did, That's and eventually messed around musically, coming up with do, 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 do. It had to have a certain kind of lilt to it to make it certainly different from Green River. It had to sound more like a little street band. And eventually, that magical antenna that I had it tuned very well, and certainly during those few months or years, things were just happening at a lightning pace. It was amazing.
And then I know that same album had Fortunate Son, and you mentioned sort of your joy at, the honorable discharge, getting out of going, Vietnam and all of that stuff. But I always find that song fascinating. We mentioned Bruce and Born in the USA, sort of similar. Both those songs are almost misinterpreted and played as like some sort of like patriotic anthems in all these movies, and Forrest Gump and the rest. But like there's sort of, I don't know if you want to call it anti-war or just like at least anti-privilege. It ain't me, I ain't no senator's son, military son. Like, talk about how that's sort of, I don't know. That's always sort of ironic to me how they're sort of played patriotically in a way. But if you listen to the words, it's some pretty searing, subversive social commentary.
Well, I originally being brought up, raised in a kind of lower middle class economic situation, in other words, common people are very suspicious of, let's say, privileged people. It's just inherent, because there's ever so many more lower class people than there are rich people. And it just seems an unfair situation when you watch, some of the things that go down in society, but especially the one at that time was, there was a war going on and there was a draft. And so every 18-year-old male, at least in America, was under that threat all the time. And so you're dealing with that as a kid, and yet you're seeing on the news, here's Senator so-and-so getting his kid, who's just turned 18, into some cushy deferment. Either he gets into an Ivy League school, or he gets him a cushy desk job somewhere that keeps him out of the draft, or certainly out of harm's way. And it doesn't seem fair. It just seems another misuse of privilege, wealth, and power. And since most of us are not living in that situation, we're very suspicious, critical of looking at that. And that's how I felt. And especially having been also in the military, it kind of gave me an even broader sort of perspective about all of that situation. I mean, it was just it was a remarkable place to be for a young man. But for instance, during the great protests of the late 60s, of course, I mean, I saw situations even where, some hippie would be spitting toward a soldier who was in uniform, right? But I would always tell him, don't you realize that guy you're spitting at is 18 years old? He feels the exact same way you do. He's not like gung-ho G.I. Joe. He doesn't want to go over there and get shot. He's a kid, just like you. Unfortunately, he couldn't get out of the way of the draft, and he got snagged. I mean, that's just the way that was. So I wrote that song in a very, very angry stance about the unfairness of class, and also of the unfairness of the selection for that war. I mean, the older I've gotten, I don't know how old you are, Jason, but the older I've gotten, the more you can see how many of these wars that we've been involved in are really just business decisions, that some tycoon wants to own all the oil over there in Iraq or some other place like that. And therefore they send all the kids over there to take care of that business for them. Yes, I happen to be a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, but that is how I see it. And so far, I haven't seen anything to dissuade me. So I wrote that song, definitely saying, it ain't me, I ain't no fortunate son. The funny thing is, you mentioned the patriotism thing. This is really ironic. So at the time, since it was very much an anti-war stance, you would have probably thought at least that a general, or maybe a politician who has a dog in the race, probably is not on your side. He probably doesn't like the point of view that's stated in the song Fortunate Son. And I kind of felt that way, you know, as I got older, even though I had done my military duty, and I was considered a veteran, even though I didn't go to Vietnam, of course. And as time went on, like you say, the song got used in a lot of movies and things. Almost, you know, how can I say it? The song became used in a sort of ironic way in movies like Forrest Gump, let's say. And there came a time, much more recently, it was during the Obama administration, and they wanted to have me as part of the entertainment. I think it was for Veterans Day, as a matter of fact, during one of the years of Obama's term in office. And so I thought, okay, well, but I want to come and sing Fortunate Son. So I let them, you know well in advance. And it was, you know, I was waiting for some sort of censure or and I mean, this is just the journey of what a wonderful country we really are. So there was a slight pushback. Somebody sent back a communication. By then there's email and all that, so it's much quicker. But it was only pushed back for about 5 minutes. And then there was a correction, and you know, somebody at a different level no, you know what? Whatever John wants to sing, that's fine. And I think I did 2 or 3 songs, something like that. Willie Nelson was also there, and so I got to join in and do a couple songs with Willie. And so then comes the day of the actual event, right? And it's Veterans Day, and we're on in a tent on the White House lawn, and there are military everywhere because we're honoring the military, right?
Right.
And there are 4-star generals and everything else on down the chain, right? And so I get up and I do Proud Mary and probably another song, and then we start the drum riff off. My drummer was Kenny Aronoff at that time, a wonderful drummer. And then I go into the guitar lick, and now they all know what it is, and all these guys are standing up and singing along, and they've got the fist in the air. It ain't me, it ain't, you know. And I just thought, man, this is the greatest thing ever. Because rather than being intimidated or insulted or whatever the emotion might have been, they were just happy as clams singing a song that they, you know, always loved. And it was sort of, in some sense, it had to do with them, but they were taking the point of view of the singer in the song, right? It was just like they were frat boys, you know, and 19 years old or something.
Wow,
it was wonderful. It was truly, I was in tears when it was done, because it just shows you what a great country America is, that we how can I say it? We're like family, you know. We have our issues, we got to get them out in the open, but man, you know, we're all Americans.
Absolutely. And what a fast, the life of that song, like you're saying, you wrote it for, you know, your generation's Vietnam War era. And then my generation comes along and it applies to the Iraq War. And there you are singing it during the Obama years for the military. Like, it's funny to watch, like, the world catch up to the song in a way, you know? Well, real quick, we have to hit at least Cosmo's Factory, because I don't know, again, what you were on for breakfast writing that album, but Run Through the Jungle, Traveling Band, Who'll Stop the Rain, Looking Out My Back Door, Long As I Can See the Light, Heard It Through the Grapevine was a cover, and then Up Around the Bend, maybe the most famous of all of them on that. But I mean, we'd be here all day if we went through all your great long backstories on all of them, but is there a way to sort of encapsulate all of them in terms of, you know, where you were in headspace in writing that overall album? Like, how the hell did you crank out so many all for one album? That's unreal to me.
Well, I would stay up very late into the night writing songs, because I at the end of 1968, when Susie Q had been a big hit, I hadn't really recorded any of the great ones yet. But I looked around at our situation and saw what, taking stock, I was a one-hit wonder. with Susie Q. And there are literally thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of one-hit wonders. And that just pushed me. It motivated me to, okay, you've been talking about this your whole life. Now's the time, right? You got to do it now. And that just kicked me into gear. And I started every day. I would stay up late at night trying to write songs and trying to come up with music for my band so that we could push forward. And the more I got into it, the more I could see I was the only one that was capable of doing it. I wasn't getting any help from anybody else in the band. They just didn't know how to, I think, Jason, what really happened was I evolved. There was some sort of a dimensional shift in my brain waves or whatever. And I mean, I really literally went to a different, that place that I'd only kind of dreamt about. And now I was able to do it. And it was an amazing way to feel. But I gave it all the gasoline that I could. I stayed up all night pushing and trying to come up with songs and riffs and musical ideas that would that I could fill a record with, and to keep the career going.
Well, there was a place up ahead and you were going. You were going up around the bend to whatever that switch that had flipped in your brain. And just like we were saying that, today's kids know Fortunate Son from Forrest Gump. A lot of them probably know Up Around the Bend from Remember the Titans or Guardians of the Galaxy or whatever. I mean, all these songs, even the Cosmos Factory songs, are popping up in movies and stuff everywhere. But I know we're sort of coming somewhat up against the clock, but I want to hit the 6th album, Pendulum, really fast because I love Hey Tonight. But of course, my listeners will kill me if we don't get at least one soundbite on Have You Ever Seen the Rain? I think I read somewhere that Fortunate Son and Have You Ever Seen the Rain just surpassed 1 billion streams this past March. They're in Spotify's Billions Club. So today's audiences listen to the heck out of it. But yeah, tell me about the writing of Have You Ever Seen the Rain really fast.
Okay, well, they say, everything that goes up has to also come down. And with all this success that the band was having after many long years of sort of being unknown, all the usual pressures came up right along with it. And the band started to become more and more unhappy or ill at ease. There's so many different ways you can say it, but finally it got to the point where it was so sort of unpleasant, especially for me, because I don't know why it is human nature, but when somebody starts to shine and out of a group of several people, and the other people are not shining so much, rather than getting busy and figuring out how they can also shine, the first thing they usually do is start trying to knock down the person that is shining. I don't know why that is true, but it's very true in human nature. And that's what was happening to me within my band. It was like, oh my goodness, I would hear these these things, said, and obviously everybody was very unhappy. And finally, I decided I was going to write a song about it. It seemed to kind of match that. Well, here we were having our shining sunny day, the day we had dreamed about since we were young. And yet it seemed, instead of having this sunny day, there was rain falling down all over it. Well, there's a phenomenon in nature. You've probably been part of it many times, where you'll look straight up in the sky and it's a blue sky, and yet somehow rain is falling down, from a cloud many miles away, and the wind is pushing it or something. And so there you are on a sunny day with rain falling down. And it seemed to be such a compelling metaphor for me to write this song. But really the inspiration for that song and what that song is about my band breaking up.
Wow. Yeah, I guess there was only one more album. Mardi Gras was right after that with Sweet Hitchhiker and a couple. But yeah, then CCR as the band broke up, and then you were off solo to the races. And final seconds, I assume we'll hear all these hits at Wolf Trap as well as stuff from your solo career. I think you just re-released your first two solo albums, or you're reissuing them next week, the Blue Ridge Rangers and John Fogerty, right? So we're gonna hear that, and maybe Center Field, Put Me in Coach, all that stuff. Or are we gonna hear the solo stuff at the show too?
Yeah, there's solo stuff, but since I'm so happy with getting back the ownership of my earlier songs, we sort of feature those a lot. What I say at the beginning of the show is, I just got my songs back, and I'm going to do all of them. It's pretty well true.
And that's what we want to hear as fans. We've been listening to these songs for years, and when we come to see John Fogerty, we want to hear that. I saw one of your great contemporaries, the great Bob Dylan, at Wolf Trap a couple years back, and I was so excited. And he played maybe one of his hits. It was all of his newer stuff, but he can do whatever he wants. He's Bob Dylan. But I'm glad that the John Fogerty is going to be playing all the great CCR stuff. That's fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for such a deep dive on your career. This was fantastic. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
You got it, Jason. It was great to talk to you. I'll see you at Wolf Trap.
Yes, John Fogerty, the legend of CCR and so many other stuff. It's going to be at Wolf Trap Saturday, August 19th. Get your tickets. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.